Hey everyone, so thank you for joining me for this Q&A live, about this cabin project. So as you can see, we're actually in the cabin. I mean, this is not some background that I've added on Zoom. I actually run a 200-foot Ethernet cable from my house to the cabin so that I could do this today in the cabin. So thank you very much for everyone that submitted questions. I actually got a lot of questions to cover, so this is really exciting because I love talking about the cabin, obviously. So thank you again, everyone, for doing this. So let's just jump right into it. So Rene, which is actually someone that I've been discussing or emailing back and forth because he's currently building a house in France, so he's kind of in a similar situation, asked me about the insurance for the house. Does the insurance company require any certified document tests for the foundation, fire safety, and wind sturdiness? So absolutely not, because my house is right here. Actually, my house insurance policy as like a maximum for like an accessory dwelling, and so they pretty much tell me like, hey, you have $30,000 of coverage for like an accessory dwelling. So right now that's all that I'm being covered by. And recently I'm actually gonna up that, because I think right now the cabin, the state that it's in, it's probably worth more than $30,000 if it was to like completely burn down. So I'm looking actually to probably get that up to like, I don't know, $60,000 or something like that. Next question, how did you select the type of wood, or is it just what was available? Well, here in my area of the United States, Southern Pine #2, which is the grading for the wood, is mostly what's available, and that's mostly what everybody uses for framing. After, for anything outside, such as the trim work or the siding, you have different options. You can go with pine, you can go with cedar, any heavy timber, you can go with pine, or you can go with Douglas fir. So there are a lot of options, but for framing, everyone is pretty much using the same thing. How did you choose for a metal roof rather than using roof tile or other materials? Well, I was trying to find whatever was going to be the easiest to install. I already have a metal roof on my house, so it seemed like a metal roof would be probably the most DIY friendly way of doing a roof. So that's the reason why I went with it. How did you calculate the R values of your walls, floor, and roof? Did you do this beforehand? So in the US, it's fairly simple. Based on where you are in the US, based on your climate zone, they tell you exactly which R value you need to be able to reach in your walls, in your ceiling, and in your floor. So that's it. And then you go to the store and you buy the insulation that's rated for your roof, your floor, or your walls based on whatever is required in your area. So it's pretty straightforward. How did you come up with the distance between your posts? Well, I mean, again, I'm a residential structural engineer by trade. That's what I do. So, I think most of everything is kind of spaced 10 feet away. But again, this is not like kind of a one-size-fits-all rule. You kind of have to think through it. And so that's kind of what I did. I kind of like estimated, how much load I would have at each location for each of my posts and footers. And that's how because you pretty much can go as far as you want. You just end up with a bigger footer, and potentially you have to start eventually using LVL beams to span between your posts, because nominal lumber such as a 2x12 is not going to be sufficient to span that long. So in my case, keeping everything at 10 foot on center for those posts allowed me to just use nominal lumber and not have to mess with LVLs. Does the municipality stipulate what materials you can use, or are you free to choose any materials you like? Well, I picked this piece of land in my house because it is outside of city limits and it is outside of an HOA/POA. So I have almost no rules to follow. And so for that reason, I could kind of do whatever I wanted. Having said that, if you're in POA or HOA, you probably would have to, there might be some rules you would have to follow as far as what materials you're allowed to use. How did you manage to connect? How did you decide the size shape of your windows? Well, that's fairly simple. I went to Lowe's, whatever was in stock, whatever was cheap, and that's kind of what I went with it. I didn't do anything custom. I kept it extremely simple. How did you manage to connect the cabin with water, electricity, and communication? Well, I'm not there yet. It's going to be connected back to the house. So that's actually one of the next steps that I'm going to do probably within the next few weeks, I'm hoping, because I want to do it before it's going to be winter and the soil is going to be frozen and I'm not going to be able to trench. But it's pretty much going to run from the cabin to the side of my house, and that's where I'll pick up. So electricity will be connected to my main panel in my main house, and then I'll connect also to the plumbing that way. Did you hire any additional pair of hands? No, I have not. Usually my father-in-law has been helping me when I'm in situation where I cannot physically, get stuff done because it's impossible for one person, but I haven't paid anyone to do anything at this point, except for the septic system has been done by a pro because you need a special license. I could not DIY a septic system. How much time did you spend on preparation before the first post went into the ground? Well, I mean, being an engineer, I love doing research. So I did a lot of research, probably months of research before I actually broke ground, because I really wanted to make sure that I had everything covered. That, the last thing you want is you want to start your project and then the county or someone tells you like, well, no, you cannot do that because you haven't thought about this rule that prevents you from doing it. So you really have to do your homework and make sure that it's actually possible. Are you planning to secure the cabin while you are not there? Well, again, I mean, it's behind my house. It's really not at risk, but you actually can see it right here. Look at this. I just installed a smart lock in the on the front door, like literally a week ago, and so now I'm much more comfortable leaving my tools and everything because I can lock this up and I don't have to worry about it. Did you select the timber yourself at the timber yard, selecting the straights and rejecting the warp pieces, or did you trust the timber merchant for that? Well, I mean, because I don't have a truck or anything, I usually try and make big orders and then they'll come and deliver it. So no, I have not picked anything so far. And so far, I've been pretty lucky. I mean, the stuff I've gotten was, pretty straight and okay to use. All right, moving on. This Law, LAU, as the following question. So what made you do the cabin and why by yourself? Well, I mean, the logic was always, an investment. I wanted to kind of build value that will increase the value of my house. And then also I plan on renting this cabin on Airbnb. So it's also an investment. And why by myself? Well, because I like the good challenge. I've always been interested in building, and I figured that it would be an amazing project to do, by myself. Looking back at what you have built, what would you have done differently? Well, I mean, this is a big loaded question because there's probably a lot of things. So I'm probably going to put that one aside, and maybe, I mean, this can probably have a full video on itself, which I probably eventually will do at the end when I'm done with this cabin. How far is the supply store? Well, I'm lucky. Even though I'm in a rural area, the Lowe's is actually only 10-15 minutes away from where I live. So it's really not too bad. What will you use the cabin for? Well, again, as I mentioned, it will be an Airbnb, and also it will be used by my family when they're visiting. So then they can have their own space. Did you work with an architect, engineer? Well, yeah, I guess engineer myself. I didn't work with an architect. I did my plans myself because this cabin is simple enough. Did you need a permit in one kind? Yes, I needed a permit for the septic system. That was the first step. And then also I needed to pull a construction permit for this cabin. So yes, if you want to do everything correctly, especially if you're going to rent it on Airbnb, you need a certificate of occupancy. And so you needed to do it by the rules and, pull all the permits that you need to pull. What kind of inspection you had to pass so far, and what was the problematic one? So far I've only done one inspection, actually. So the next episode will be about that inspection. So it didn't go exactly as planned, so I'll discuss that. But so far that's it. So I'll have probably another 2-3 inspections before this whole cabin is done. So we will really see how this is going. All right, Matt asks, do you feel you've saved more dollars by spending your time doing the work yourself instead of subcontracting all the work and spending that time saved making dollars for yourself? That's a great question. I'm keeping track of all the hours I've spent. I'm keeping track of all the money I've spent. So at the end of this cabin project, I will be able to tell you exactly how much money, pretty much I saved on an hourly basis by doing the work myself. And I did some estimate, and I still think that working on my cabin is probably, I'm probably saving like maybe $80 to $100 an hour doing the work myself versus, hiring someone to do it. So in that case, I don't make that kind of money at work. So it makes great sense for me to actually do the cabin myself. All right, next up, Brett asked, same like a similar question about the piers, the depths, and all that. So again, as I mentioned, because of my engineering background, that's how I figured out the pattern and where to sit the post. As far as like the depths, it will depend on your area. It depends on your frost line. In my case, everything has to be 24 inches deep, but it could be completely differently in your area. So, to figure that out, you really kind of have to talk about You have to talk to local builders, your local inspection office, because yes, you see me build this cabin, this construction, maybe this foundation would not be acceptable in other area of the country. So you have to be really the US is huge. We have completely different climate from one side to the other. We have completely different soils as well. So there's not one size fit all. So you really have to kind of do your local research to find out what foundation system would be best for your project. Timeline, how much time have you invested to this point? So yeah, I think I'm about 590 hours of work done. That doesn't include all the time I spend doing research. But if you put it, that's about, I think, 75 days working 8 hours. So it's not that bad. It's just that because I only work so little, it's taking me forever, but it's really not that bad. Okay. Bill is asking, what was the total cost including addition? So, so far, I think I'm about roughly around $28,000 to $30,000 for what I've done so far. Do you have building plans for sale? No, not at the moment, but that's something I would be interested in doing. Potentially, I think I'd like to put a really nice set, kind of like compress everything I've learned, the plumbing, the electrical, the framing, into something that, is really helpful for someone that has never done it. Because if you just buy plans, it's not going to tell you like typical details or how to frame this or frame that. So I would like to do kind of a beginner's guide to, hey, this is how you go about building a cabin. So we'll see. That will be for later. Robert asked, if we wanted to mostly follow your design but scale up to maybe 25 by 25, what things would need to be changed? Again, this is too much of an open question. It really depends on your area. If you're like up north and you have potentially 10 feet of snow that can fall on your roof, then everything is going to change. Like your design is going to have to be vastly different. So that's what I want people to be aware of, is it really depends on your area, and the code kind of like tells you what to do in different areas. Cody asked, have you always wondered how to determine what type of foundation you will need for the cabin, especially if you're not working off engineer stamp plans? How deep and how many footers? Would it have been better to have a crawl space? So yes, most houses here have a crawl space, so that means you have to do a perimeter footing and you build CMU walls. It's definitely a better way of constructing a house or a cabin, but obviously, as a DIYer, it just was like, there's no way. Like, I don't know I'm going to lay out like a CMU wall straight. So, I just kind of like gave up on that idea. And so post and beam was like definitely what I wanted to do. Okay. Neil is asking, what about wildfire? What are you doing to reduce fire risk? So that's a great point. I'm really surrounded by trees here in the cabin. So thankfully, in this area of Western North Carolina, we get a lot of rain. So it's really raining at least once or twice a week. So if it stays that way, I think the fire risk is rather low in this area. But you never know. We could have, dry weather, and then it could be a risk. So I haven't really done anything to mitigate it, because I'm just hoping that the climate here locally will be good enough to, prevent that risk. Cal is asking, do you use a different grade type of lumber for your rafters? They're usually longer and need to be pretty straight. That's a good point. I've got burn on one rafters that I realized was completely, sagging, completely warped after the fact. So no, again, I just got whatever the lumber yarn had and whatever they delivered. So I didn't get a better grade. It worked mostly. I think there's only one that's bad that I'm going to have to probably shave off at the bottom, because it's kind of like, it's just warps. But mostly, it's been fine. Kyle is also asking, how do you deal with burnout / motivation? I'm looking at starting a build in the next 5 years, but I want to try to find little tips and tricks now to deal with the inevitable feeling of being overwhelmed or just burned out. That is probably the best question you can ask. Because when I started this project, I really thought that this was going to be a 1 year thing. I was like, because 1 year seems like distant enough that you're like, oh, this is a long time. So this is a big project. I can probably get it done in 1 year. But this was completely silly way of looking at it. So yeah, this building, if you're especially, doing it mostly by yourself and you have other responsibilities such as family and work, you have to know that you're engaging. It's going to be taking a long time. So it is really, really easy to feel overwhelmed. And so the best way is really, you just focus 1 week at a time. You're like, okay, what do I need to get done next? And you get it done. And then what is next? Get it done. If you start, and sometimes I fall into that trap. I start listing all the stuff that I need to do in the next few months. And it's insane. Like, it's really not worth it, because it's going to scare you, and it's going to demotivate you, because when you realize the amount of work, you're going to lose, your motivation. So really just focus on a weekly basis, and just keep moving. And if you keep moving, eventually you'll get done. You don't know when, but you'll get there. Where did you get all the information when it comes to building codes? There are so many different little things. Did you get all the information in one place, or did you digest all that information and apply it? Well, again, I come from an engineering background, so I had some knowledge about framing, the building code requirement for framing. I didn't know anything about plumbing, electrical. So it's pretty much a mix of what I know from work, but which is still limited. And then I just did research. I just, you can buy books online that focus on, building codes for plumbing, electrical. And so I bought those, I read them, then I watched video online, then I read, I wasn't just going to trust some random guy on YouTube. So I really got a bunch of information from different sources. And then I kind of like, well, okay, well, that makes sense. But I mean, at the end of the day, it goes back to the code. But sometimes the code is not the easiest thing to read and to digest. So that's why sometimes books that will, dumb it down for you are really useful. And then also you can watch videos of people that hopefully know what they're doing, and you can see if it matches. You're like, oh, again, this guy seems like you know what he's doing. And so all this information put together, digesting it, and then eventually you start feeling like, okay, I kind of understand how this is going, and it's not that difficult. All right, Rick is asking, would 2x6 rafters have been sufficient for this cabin? So you know that I've used 2x12 rafters, which a lot of people complain about how sturdy this cabin is, and I do agree. There's some things that I overkill. I get that, but what people don't understand is that the size of my rafters, the size of my walls, the size of my floors are all governed by insulation requirement. The only reason I have 2x12 rafters is because I need an R38 in my ceiling assembly to meet energy code requirement. That's it. Like, structurally speaking, I don't know, I would have to run the numbers, but I'm pretty sure a 2x8 or 2x10 would work. So I did not need a 2x12. I just needed, because you need enough depth in your cavity to fit your insulation. So that's why sometimes people try, they get confused. They're like, oh my gosh, why is this so, why is everything so big? Well, that's the reason. Let's see. I'm getting lost. Okay, what types of floor insulation option have you considered, and which one will you do? I think sprayed insulation would have been probably better, but again, you have to hire someone. I don't necessarily want to do that, so I'm probably going to go with that insulation. Again, meeting the requirement, for energy efficiency. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing. Did you have all the money up front for these projects, or do you buy material as you save up for them? Well, it's actually a mix of both. Before I started, we set a little money aside for this project. We obviously had some other stuff happening. Our dog actually needed a couple of surgeries. We didn't have pet insurance. We ended up spending a lot of money, which was supposed to be cabin money, and that went into surgery for both of my dog knees. And I didn't plan for that. So right now, it's pretty much kind of like save and spend as you go. So, I just try to, every month we kind of see what we have available, and I kind of like spend as I go. And that's kind of what I've been following at this point. Steve, if doing another cabin, would you consider hiring help? What would you, would you consider hiring help? Sending the wall by yourself seems dangerous, or maybe the roofing. So yes, there's definitely stuff like, you could, everything, if you have like 4 or 5 people, it would make your life a lot easier. So I haven't really, considered it, but I think it'd be wise. It'd be wise to get more hands if you can, for sure. Okay. Ash is asking, my questions are mostly related to plumbing and electrical things, like, did you connected the plumbing drainage to the main line? Also, can you take electricity from the main house or the street? Well, that's a great question. So because again, I was trying at first to connect to my septic system of my house, but my house is from the 70s. They don't even know where the drain field is. And so instead of opening a kind of worm and trying to see what's there, and maybe they would have found problems, blah, 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 I was like, you know what? We have enough space here by the cabin. I got a brand new septic system installed, which you can see in like the earlier episode. So I have a septic tank and I have a drain field. So the waste from the cabin is completely separated from anything else. It will be dealt with right here with that system. As far as the utilities, as I mentioned, this is all going to go back to the house, and it's going to get connected that way. So I don't have to deal with like connecting to the main line or anything like that. So also, can I do it by myself? Like what the requirements, like license needed, or do I need to get any permits from the city? So again, it depends. In my area, because I own the land, I'm allowed to do pretty much all the work myself. But some areas might not allow you to do that. So again, call the city, call the county, ask them the question, and they will be the best one, answering it for you. Denise is asking, what is the travel distance between your home, where you live daily, and the place you build your cabin? If long distance, how many travel hours have you accrued in your build? Well, if you've watched enough episodes, you know that my house is literally right here. I'm just like on a little uphill here. That's where the cabin is. My house is right here. It's 150 feet from the cabin. So thankfully, I don't have to really travel much between one and the other. All right, next, Chris is asking, what is the process order for building a cabin? Well, again, as I kind of alluded to it, you kind of start with the health department, with the septic system, if that's kind of what you need, because if you cannot connect to like a sewer, that's kind of the first step. And then you have your building permit, for the actual cabin itself, and then you have to go through all the inspection that they will require you to do. Of course, this can all vary a little bit depending on your county and your city. So again, best thing to do is you call them up and you ask them that question. How do you determine if what you're building is built to proper code? Obviously, some research needs to be done before you build, so you don't end up with a surprise. What are some resources? What is the process looking like? What happens if an inspector doesn't like or you built something? So that's a good point. Again, I think you need to do your own research to figure things out. Also, try and do research that matches your area, because inspectors are used to seeing things done a certain way. Oh, it's done in the area. So if you're building something completely out there and that you've seen on the internet and no one has done it in your area, the builder inspector could be like, well, what's going on? Like, what building techniques are you using? And they might be pretty confused. So again, I would say, if you build to your local code, you should have no problem. The inspector should be objective. It's either you're meeting code requirement or you're not. It's not like, oh, I don't like how you did something. How did you find the details for cutting, installing the vapor barrier around the windows? So yeah, that is same, just online research. Actually, if you go to like just a window manufacturer, they actually have manuals. They have installation manuals for every stuff they're selling you. So technically, they have instruction on how to install a window, and there's also tons of information online to also teach you how to do that. How did you learn about putting tape on the top of the deck joist or retreating the cut ends of treated lumber? So again, because of my work, I go fairly often on job sites. And so, even though I'm there for like structural reason, I always take a look at everything, because I was building my cabin, I was always like, oh, okay, well, let me see how they did their windows. Let me see how they're doing this. So every time I'm on the construction site, I take full advantage of looking at everything that's available for me to see and learn from it pretty much. So that's how I've learned those tips, because that's what is common practice around here. What are some things that you felt were going to be easy in your head but ended up being a total pain? Well, as he mentioned at the end, mostly everything, yes. I mean, everything seems easy when you think about it first. You're like, oh, that's not that difficult. But everything takes much longer than you think it will take, and it's going to be more difficult. That's something you just have to accept. And so that's just how it is. Did you learn any new practices that made your life a lot easier compared to the way you envision a certain build practice? I.e., instead of trying to hammer something in a tight spot, you figured out to use, the pile nailer. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you also need to kind of learn tips and tricks of how to make things easier. And yeah, a palm nailer was definitely a really good investment, because that cost only like $40, and it allows you to like really go and nail stuff and nail hangers, and really helpful. So apart from that, I mean, not really. You've seen, like, I'm using basic tools. Like, I'm not using any fancy tools. It's really basic. Okay, Nicholas is asking, how did you get materials to your property? Were they delivered or did you hold them yourself? So again, I mean, that's a big learning lesson for me. They're delivering it on my driveway, which is back down here. It's not really far, but it's downhill, so I have to go uphill to hold. So I've been holding everything you see here has been held by myself up that hill. And if you've seen enough videos, I mean, I usually make sure to show you that, yeah, that's the struggle that I went through. Okay, what else? Did you ever consider using some kind of vehicle to get materials up the hill to the cabin rather than carrying them yourself? That's a great point. I mean, honestly, after I just did the foundation, I was like, man, this is not going to work out. Like, this is so much effort. So at first, I was really tempted with buying a used, ATV, like a four-wheeler. And I really thought I could get one for like a couple of grand. And then I really saw that, well, if you want to get something that, is going to be reliable and not falling apart, it was more like $5,000. And so I kind of, I just didn't do it. Looking back, I probably should have, because yeah, it would have saved me a lot of time and effort. I'll close out the Lowe's, Home Depot. As I mentioned before, I'm like about 10-15 minutes away. So that's really helpful. When did you start the project, and when do you expect to finish? Well, I've started 2 years ago. I can tell you that. When is it going to be finished? I have no clue. I keep saying, oh, maybe another year, but I really don't know. I mean, at this point, I need to finish up the outside, the siding, and then I'm completely done with the outside. When I do the siding and the trim work, then all I have done is pretty much all the inside. So I don't know. I mean, I know it's tough because it's all the finish work, so it takes time. But it's really tough to tell how long this is going to take, because I've never done it, so I really don't know. How have the short-term rental market changed in the past couple of years affected the way you'll approach marketing, renting your cabin? Again, I'm in an area that's fairly touristic, and I'm in the Appalachian Mountain. People come in the winter to go skiing. People come in the summer. People come in spring. People come in the fall to see the leaves changing colors. So it's a fairly like, this area is really great for people going on vacation. It doesn't really get hot. Like, it doesn't get above 80 in the summer. So all the people from Florida come. So I'm not worried. I'm going to probably put it on Airbnb, and I'm not too worried. I think that I'll get people to rent, because it's just such a great place. And not the cabin, but I mean the area in general. Katie's asking, did you go to an engineer to get your house plan made? How much did it cost? As I mentioned, because I have a little bit of experience in that field, I did everything myself. But typically, yeah, an engineering plan, I mean, it could, I mean, I know, because I charge people, that's what I do for work. So a little cabin like that probably be around like $1,000 to $1,500 if you want stamped plans. If you just want like design plans, maybe $400 or $500. But if you want actually an engineer to show you all the details and stamp their name on it, they're probably going to charge you, I would say, like probably $1,500 at least. Did you have to work around any states, city, and zoning laws? So again, I don't have really any stuff, because I'm outside of the city. I'm outside of, I don't have any HOA, POA. So the only rule really that the permitting office told me, they're like, hey, you live on 1 acre, you have your house, you're only allowed to have one building per half acre. So that's it. Like, I can build this cabin, but that's it. I cannot add any other building on this piece of land. So that's the only limitation so far that I ran into. Are there any hidden costs when buying land that you wish you knew before starting this project? I mean, so again, it was a house that we bought, not just the raw land. I would say that the challenging thing is that before when you find land or a house that has enough land, the challenge is you need to kind of know, like, is it going to be able to accept a septic system? Is the soil good enough for a new septic system? And you don't know that stuff until you actually pull a septic permit and that someone comes and digs holes and look at it. So that's kind of the challenge, because when you're buying a house or land, usually it's like, hey, you got 30 days to close. How are you going to make sure that you can verify all this? In my case, we kind of took a leap of faith. I didn't get that checked. I was like, you know what? It looks like there's enough room. I'm hoping, crossing my finger, that we can make it work. Because usually, there's engineers that can do that as well, check your soil and tell you if you can put a septic system. But they're all like 6-8 weeks of backlog. So I could not get anyone lined up to do it. So took kind of leap of faith, and thankfully, it worked out. Sourcing materials. How I've been searching Google and YouTube for any tips or information on how a regular person goes about sourcing materials for building a house, and I can't find anything. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, literally when I started, I was like, okay, well, I know Lowe's has materials, but like, is that enough? Like, do they carry everything that you can actually build a house? And yes, I mean, literally Lowe's or usually you'll also have like maybe local building suppliers. They have everything you will need to build a house, A to Z, like seriously. So yes, you can literally go to Lowe's. You might have to do special ordering when you get like, a lot of materials, but they have everything you will need to build a house. David, so yeah, we're almost getting close to the end of the question. So if you have any other question right now, make sure to put them. Hey, I see Emmanuel has made it, so that's great. But yeah, make sure to post your question in the comments, because when I'm done with this one, I only have one page left. I'm probably gonna, I'll just shut this down. So if you have any questions, go ahead. David is asking, why did you go with the premixed cement versus mixing your own gravel, Portland, and water? I think it would have been cheaper. I mean, honestly, I just wanted something simple. So I did buy the premix bag, 80 pounds bags, just because, I mean, I don't have time to try and like mix your cement and your aggregate and your sand. Like, I mean, maybe it's easy when you know how to do it, but I was just like, I didn't feel like doing it. Would you still use OSB for your subfloor given all the problems it had when it got wet? Would you have used plywood in hindsight? So that's a good point. I've got so much hate from people because I've used OSB. And so let me tell you this. I mean, around here, that's what everyone's using. So I was like, well, that's kind of, what people use. So that's what I ended up using. I mean, having said that, builders use something called Advantech, which is a much apparently better quality OSB, which has like a really long, lifespan, or like it can really literally be, in 1 inch of water, and it will still be fine and don't swell. I went and bought the cheap stuff because at the time, I mean, Advantech went down, but at the time it was, I think, $90 a sheet of Advantech. And I was like, there is no way I'm going to pay that. So I went with just like, the cheapest stuff. And I mean, you've seen me. If you've seen my video, I spent so much time and effort trying to protect everything because I was always so scared that water was going to end up destroying this OSB. And I mean, now I have a roof, so I don't have to worry about it. But I would say, looking back, I mean, especially if Advantech has gone down, go with that potentially. And I'll use plywood. I mean, apparently people just swear by plywood, so maybe go with plywood. Did you consider placing a layer of reflex sticks insulation on top of the joist before the subfloor for insulation purposes? So I mean, of course, this building is not necessarily going to be super energy efficient. I mean, you can see, like, if you want to go, passive, and, you can add rigid insulation on the outside. You can use it. You can add some at the bottom. You can add it on your roof and everything. In my opinion, it was just going to complexify everything. And because this is my first time doing it, I was like, I don't want it to take longer. I don't want it to be more difficult, because if you add rigid foam insulation on the outside, you really have to, trim your window differently. It kind of like makes things a little harder. And, at some point I'm like, I'm trying to finish this project. It's been 2 years. So there's only so much I'm willing to do. And eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of going to build, the typical way. Sure, it's not super efficient. There is thermal bridging at the stud and everything. So be it. The only thing I might do on the bottom, when I put my insulation, I might put rigid ball on top of that to prevent thermal bridging. But that's about it. So we'll see. Did you consult with contractors on how to do various things before you did them? Did you consult someone on how to install windows before attempting it, or did you do your own research and watching YouTube videos? Well, as I said, it's really a mix of everything. I typically, I knew stuff from work. I learned stuff from going on job site with builders. Sometimes I even ask builders, when I'm on site visit, I can be like, yeah, just having small talk about construction method and best practices. And then it's really a lot of like doing your own research, like learning about building science. How do you do a wall assembly? And that's going to depend on where you are in the US. Are you in like a dry climate, a humid climate? So all those things can change. And it's very overwhelming, but you kind of have to like keep reading about it, and eventually, well, like anything in life, you learn about it and you feel more comfortable about it. So that's kind of how I figured it out. How did you decide on the orientation of the structure? Did you consider the path of the sun at all? I mean, I wish, but no. I mean, literally, I'm in the corner of my lot, so I was completely constrained by the setback. So literally, I mean, when I was trying to like stake this cabin, I had maybe like 2 foot of play so that it would fit within, the setback on both sides. So no, I did not go fancy with, where's the sun? Where am I going to get my energy? No, I was like, you know what? This is where it fits. This is where it's going to go. Done. Which again is not the best way of doing it, but I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go. Did you clear all the problematic trees around the structure before starting? Problematic as in tree leaning towards the cabin and at risk of falling on the cabin. Well, yes, I did cut a few trees. I had a video about that. Apparently, I did a terrible job using a chainsaw. I mean, same. I try to do my best trying to learn about it, but I really think that it's the kind of stuff you almost have to take a class, to be able to do it safely. I mean, thankfully, nothing bad happened. But yes, I took down about 2 or 3 trees. I'm still surrounded by trees. I mean, that's why I really want a good insurance coverage because, a bad storm and boom, tree falls on the cabin and that's it. Like it can really happen. So I'm definitely going to be, I'm probably going to get people to like always, cut the branches so that nothing really kind of like falls off. But a tree could fall. But hopefully insurance would cover that. All right, Kevin asked, and that's my last question for this. How do you manage to build and work, and work and family? So that's also a great question. It's been very, very, very difficult to work full time. I have a 2-year-old daughter and build this cabin, and on top of that, doing kind of the video stuff. Because when you think about it, like the time that I spend just placing the camera, just like it's just an added layer of like complexity. If I was just like coming and working, it would really simplify my life. But I don't know. I really enjoy making the videos and sharing my experience and my, this adventure that I can't help by doing it. But it's difficult. So like before attempting a project like that, you have to make sure that, everyone is on board, that your significant other, your family, that you can make it work. Because if you just jump both feet in, it could be really bad. Your significant other could be like, well, what's going on? Like, this is taking forever. Like, why aren't you done yet? So it really needs to be discussed. You also have to set, realistic expectation. Like, hey, I can only work 5 hours, 8 hours a week. That's it. Like, a Saturday morning and a Sunday morning, and that's it. That's all that's feasible. And that will work in the long term. Because that's what you have to keep in mind. Like, this is a marathon. Like, you can't just go and just be like, oh, I'm just going to get this done. Like, no, it's going to take years potentially if you only do it on the weekend. So you need to just set a timeline, a number of hours that is viable and that you can sustain for like a couple of years, and that you and your family can sustain. So that's probably the biggest lesson from this project. All right, let's see what people say in the comment. So thank you for posting questions. So did supply chain shortages, will building supplies interrupt or cause delays with the building of this cabin? That's a great question. So that is why, for example, for the windows, I used like whatever was in stock in Lowe's, because everything was like 10 weeks out at least to get windows. Also, the lumber went crazy expensive 2 times, in the past 2 years. So literally, I checked the price of the lumber, like the actual like stock price, which is like if you type like lumber futures online, it will show you how much it's trading for. And I was paying attention to that. Like at some point, I thought it was going up, because usually if it goes up, it will take, I don't know, a few weeks to a few months to like actually be reflected in the pricing installs. So when I thought it was going up, I was like, oh, let's go. And I would put like, I would spend $3,000-$4,000 in materials. But yeah, I had to play that game where when it was really high, I was like, no, I'm not buying anything. And so hopefully it went back down. And, now it's kind of okay, I guess. Still cheaper than like before COVID, but still more expensive than before COVID, but manageable, I would say. What was the most painful injury or accident that happened to you during this build? Thankfully, I'm pretty impressed. I have not really had anything. And, I've put all those rafters up, this beam, the roof I've done by myself, if you've seen my latest video. I'm really knocking on wood. I have the siding to finish and the soffit. Once I'm done with that, then it's only inside work. And I think at that point, I will be safe. But yeah, on the ladder, I've never had any scare, but I know I'm always like, all it takes is just a little sliding and that's it. You're down like 10, 15 feet down. That's all it takes. So I'm always trying to be really conscious about it, but to some extent, sometimes it's just bad luck. So thankfully, nothing. Like literally the worst thing that has happened to me is like, just hammering my finger and that's it. Like, so it's not been bad, but you have to be really always conscious of what you're doing. Don't work if you're exhausted. Just be aware of your surrounding and try to limit the risk as much as possible. So thankfully, I'm really hoping that this will be an injury-free project, but we'll see. I still have some more to do. Okay. Do you think that have a bigger construction vocabulary, especially after learning new techniques within your project? Well, definitely. I mean, just doing the research about plumbing, electrical, and even framing. Like I've learned so much more vocabulary, especially when I talk with builders or stuff like that. Like yeah, or even my knowledge of the building materials, or like anything. I mean, it taught me, through all my research, like I've learned so much, and it's been probably one of the best part of this project has been to learn this much about so many different things. Like now I just gained all those skills to build. Like I mean, when I'm done with this cabin, I guess it's like building an actual house. It's kind of like that, just bigger. So it feels really good to like learn all those skills and put them to use. Let's see, is this project more than you expected, or did you feel like it's along the line of what you expected? It's definitely not what I expected. I really thought that, as I mentioned earlier, I was going to be done in a year, about a year, and also thought that this was going to be small. Like when I drew the plan, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to go like tiny house where it's like 100 square foot or less. So let's do a little bit bigger. But like the cabin is 360 square foot. That's not that big. But because my land is sloped, like this high side of the cabin back there is 6 foot off the ground. So then you add 8 foot to the top of the wall, and then you add another, I don't know, 5 feet to the ridge. So this cabin turned out to be, I mean, to me, when I stand outside, it's gigantic. Like to me, I'm just like, oh, is this thing? How did it get so big? I wasn't expecting that. I was just thinking, oh, little cabin. But yeah, it just got a lot bigger than I thought, and it's also taking a lot longer than I thought. So. Nails or screws, how do you decide? I mean, yeah, again, I'm not an expert. I tend to put a lot of screws where it's not needed, just because as an engineer, we love to put, those GRK screws everywhere. But I know I might not be the best person to answer that question. So I would say, I mean, mostly all the framing is nailed, and you shouldn't really need screws. I mean, you need screws to install your decking. So it's kind of like, what is the best practice? And again, if you learn about, what specific thing you're building, you should be able to know what is the best practice as far as like, nails versus screws. For example, for flooring, there's kind of like two schools of thought. I use screws for the floor sheathing. Some people just nail it. That might be the main thing that you have to kind of, pick one or the other. But then everything else is mostly nailed. Or if you're using screws, there's a special reason for it. Like if you really need something anchored, you're going to use an actual screw rather than just like a nail, because a nail could it could withdraw if it's going to be a connection that's going to be having a lot of forces through it potentially. All right, which discipline, electrical, mechanical, do you think you really learn more in while working with this project? Well, obviously, I think plumbing and electrical, because I didn't know anything about those two. Plumbing and electrical, I knew nothing about, or very, I've changed like an electrical outlet in my past. That was about it. Like I didn't know like how many circuits do you have to do, the amperage, the arc fault protection, what kind of plumbing size, and like there's so many things. And again, a lot of it has been observation going on job site. When I would go on site visit, I'd look at how stuff is done. I look at pictures online. You can look, you're just like, hey, rough framing for a kitchen, or rough framing for, rough plumbing for, a bathroom. And then you look at pictures and you kind of see like, and then if you compare enough of it, you kind of figured out, okay, what do they all have in common? And that's probably the best practice to do it. So that's what I would say. Can you add a loft to allow for bigger families? That's a great point. I mean, most people building cabins, like they would put a loft. I will not. And the reason is I'm trying to do something as simple as possible. And I felt like putting a loft would be added complexity. The other issue is that if you want a loft, my roof is not steep enough to have a loft. If you want a loft, you typically need, I mean, again, it depends on like your whole cabin size, but typically they will use 12-12 roof, like literally like 45 degrees. And that is extremely steep. And so I thought about it. I mean, cabins look so much better with a steep roof. Of course it looks better. But my train of thought was, I'm going to be the one putting the roof on this thing. I don't want to put myself at risk or more than I need. So my roof is only a 612. So I think between, the plate, like the plate right here behind me and the ridge, this is only like 4 feet or 4.5. So even if I were to put like a loft, it wouldn't be really, it wouldn't be really spacious at all. It felt really cramped. So no. And also the other reason is because it's going to be an Airbnb. I was like, I don't want a ladder. I don't want people getting on, I don't want people getting up there and then people jumping and hurting themselves. Like, I don't want the liability. So all those reasons, is why I decided to not go with, any kind of like added loft space. How often would you say you spend on the cabin during the week? That's a great question. Thank you. So yes, at first I was working a lot more, but then again, it kind of like burned myself out. We literally had a daughter. My daughter was maybe like a month or 2 months old when I started building this cabin, which is insane. And at first, I would work even on the weeknights, and it was just insane. It was too much. So right now, my schedule is I work 2 half days on the cabin a week. So like you could say like, half a day on a Saturday, half a day on a Sunday. So I typically do not work more than 8 hours a week on the cabin. And again, keep in mind that because I'm like, recording everything, it takes, a lot of all that time could be spent, making progress faster. So I think that even I'm going slower than if someone were to work and not, do all the recording as well. It's not too many things you love and super happy to be a part of this project. Well, thank you, Emmanuel. I mean, yeah, this is a crazy project. I can't, yeah, it's, I mean, now, I feel pretty good about it because the roof is done. So I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere. Once I'm done with the outside, it's going to be completely done outside. I'm going to be like, okay, the outside is completely done. There's siding, there's trim. Then I only have to focus on the inside. So yeah, but trust me, a year ago when I was still like putting this, this rafters together, I was like, this is insane. Like there's so much. So again, why you shouldn't really try to think too much ahead because it's going to scare you because you're going to realize how much there is to do. Did I go to the university in the USA? Yeah, I actually went. I went to Texas A&M in Texas. So I'm French, and I grew up in France. And when I was studying in France, I had the opportunity to come to the US to do a master's degree. And so I ended up in Texas A&M in College Station, Texas. That's where I got my master's. And then I've been in the US ever since. So I'm going on with me like 10, 11 years that I've been in the US. I am currently building my own house as well. You gave me the courage. You can do it. I'm having a hard time deciding if I should zip sheathing or go with the house wrap. Oh, did you decide? Oh, that's good. That's a good question. Actually, I was on a site visit the other day, and I talked builders. We talked about that. Again, when I did it, zip was, whatever COVID time, zip system was super expensive, so I didn't even consider it. If you can afford it, if you can afford zip system and it works with your budgeting, absolutely do it because you can just get both the sheathing and your building wrap at once. All you have to do is just tape the seam and you're done. So, there's no doubt in my mind that if it, I don't know how much zip system costs nowadays, but if it's not that much of a premium, just do it. Where did you find the connectors for the latch timber for the front porch? Looks great. Yeah, this is simple. This is actually just the sell at Lowe's. It's Simpson. Simpson they make all sorts of like structural connectors for residential framing. And so Simpson they have a collection which is like an outdoor collection. I can't remember the name. They make all sorts of like stuff to put on like heavy timber. And so that's it. Like they literally sell it at Home Depot or Lowe's. They might not have all of it available in the store, but you can probably find it on their website, and then they'll ship it to you. We refer to our cabin as a wood reinforced nail structure. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, which is great. I mean, wood is really forgiving. It can kind of move and shift, and nails, they have this ductility. Like it works well. Like it's not, like where I'm from in France, they built mostly everything out of CMU block, which is, concrete. I mean, it definitely makes for like a sturdier structure, but it takes a lot more materials, a lot more energy. I mean, I think wood is better in the sense that if it's, harvested responsibly, then it's kind of a renewable resource to that point. So again, I mean, I think if I were to do it again, if I had all the time in the world, I would have probably tried to make this cabin like as energy efficient as possible, which I didn't. But I think, yeah, I mean, wood construction is great, and if you can make it, airtight and very energy efficient, I mean, you can really do some really great, comfortable house that will not cost you much of anything in energy consumption, electricity, gas, or whatnot. Thanks for your time. Everyone wants to know if you will come help us with our builds. Wait, I can't see how many hours is the main from there. I'm not in. Also, I said I went to college in Texas, but actually I live in North Carolina now. I'm in Western NC, in the Appalachian Mountains. So I do not live in Texas. I lived in Houston for 5 years, and I got so tired of it. It's flat. It's extremely hot in the summer. And I was like, no, thank you. So we moved here 3 years ago in this area. But yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I guess it depends how big your building is. But as you probably heard, like, I don't have a lot of time available right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys can get it done. Maybe maybe get some help. Maybe get some friends to help you out. And that can really speed up the process, in my opinion. But yeah, anyway, I mean, good luck on the project, and I'm glad you're doing it, because it really takes a lot of effort. A lot of people can they can comment, and they can make fun of something, but actually taking action and building a cabin, yeah, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of courage, and so kudos to you. Oh no, okay, you're in Texas, and okay, no, yes, I'm not in Maine. I know that sweater that I keep wearing, I got from what was it, like Goodwill, because I was trying for I wanted cheap clothing that I could use to build, and if I trash it, I'm not gonna feel bad about it. So I got this Maine sweater, and then obviously everyone thinks I'm in Maine, but no, I'm not. Well, Steve, thank you. You love watching the process. I'm invested in this series. Well, so am I. And so hopefully I'm gonna, it'd be. I mean, sometimes just like it would go so much faster if I stopped all the video stuff. But I don't know. It's just been so much fun that I just want to, I want to at least get to the end of it and really still, recall and have all this process documented, because I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. Enjoy your building process video looking at similar project in Southwest Virginia. Yeah, I mean that's similar. That Southwest Virginia is I mean we're probably we're neighbors, state neighbors, so probably similar code requirement, I would say, in that area. So yeah, I mean, go for it. Just do it. What kind of engineering do you do? Commercial, residential? What kind of projects do you work on? Well, great question. So again, I graduated college about 8-9 years ago. I started in commercial project, and I really just didn't like it, because it was good, but it's not like a skill set that's applicable in your day-to-day life. Like, you learn to build, a hospital. Well, that's great, but you're not going to build a hospital. You're not going to use that knowledge on like home project. So I was like, okay, I want something that's more hands-on. So then I switched from commercial to residential, which I've done for 5 years now. And this is great, because residential, it's hands-on, and everything I learned, I can use it in my own life. I can use it to fix my house. I can use it to build this cabin. So to me, it was just a no-brainer that residential was just so much better for me than commercial. How bad did you want to drilling spindles? Your patience paid off. Porch came out amazing. Yes, the spindles. I mean, I could have done them with wood, which would have just been easy. You just nail them. But I felt like it would be such a pain to stain, all the spindle. So I was like, I've seen those aluminum one on, high-end homes in the area. So I was like, that looks great. Let's just do that. And so yeah, I ordered everything. I mean, you're absolutely right. It was a pain in the butt to put it in. Especially the one in the stairs, because I don't mean, if you paid attention to the video in the stairs, the upper part with all the spindles is actually sliding in perfectly between two posts. So you cannot cheat. You cannot angle it to get it in and then slowly lower the other side. You have to get everything in at once, like translating down. And it made it so much more difficult. But thankfully, if you try hard enough, it didn't take me more than 20 25 minutes, so it wasn't the end of the world. But yeah, I mean, I'm biased. I love the deck. It looks so good. I mean, I just love it. It really turned out really well. We just put a roof over our front deck with the output. Then 80 years. Well, that's pretty impressive. 87 years old. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll still be building cabin at 87. I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's impressive. That is really impressive. So great job. Have there been any shrinkage in that wood yet? So not really in the house, because the lumber is dried, but on the deck, yes. On the deck, everything is pressure treated, and so when I installed the deck planks, I got them close to each other. They were touching each other, and then so I installed it that way because I knew that the wood was wet because it was pressure treated. And yeah, sure enough, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Now it has almost a 1/4 of an inch gap, which is good. I mean, that's kind of what you expect for a deck. So yeah, it is insane how much pressure treated wood will shrink and lose a lot of its volume. So you definitely have to think about that, because if I had put like an 1/8 of an inch spacing between those bonds, yeah, like right now it would look absolutely ridiculous because of how much it's shrunk. Using scaffolding instead of use ground technique. Do you wish? So I mean, I know I got a lot of people asking me about scaffolding, and I mean, again, same. If you have it, if you can afford it, I mean, definitely do it. For me, I looked at different options. I was like, okay, you can rent it, but I only work 8 hours a week. So, okay, what do I do? Do I rent it for like 5 months and spend like $5,000, or even probably more? So, if let's say you work full time on the cabin, you're like, okay, we're going to install the roof. We need scaffolding for like a week straight. Boom. Yeah, absolutely. Do it. But in my case, it was just not worth it. And then I was like, okay, well, then maybe should I just buy it? Same, it's just several $1,000s. Then I was like, okay, maybe I should build DIY scaffolding out of like 2x4. And I probably would have, if I couldn't install the roof in a safe manner or safe enough for me, I probably would have, bit the bullet and either buy scaffolding or build DIY scaffolding. But so far, I made it work. So right now, as I mentioned, I only have, I need to finish like the soffit on the outside. I need to put tongue and groove on that. I need to install the siding. If I can manage to do that with just a ladder, then I'm golden. Then that's it. I don't need scaffolding. But again, if you can do it, I would say just do it. Let's see. Thanks for the Porch video. Well, no problem. I had trouble at first, but I looked at other channel and pissed it all out, showing how to install that. Oh, I'm glad. I mean, that's what I'm doing this video, so that hopefully you guys can get some value out of it. Can you give me details on your plans for house, sewer, septic? I have to plan perk test on our property. Just completed current survey. I mean, again, it really will depend on the area, but in my area, there's a health department. And so I got in touch with them. I was like, hey, I need a new septic system. You kind of like, you do a septic system permit. You draw, hey, this is my house. This is the cabin. This is where my system is going to go potentially. And then they come, they dig big holes in the ground because they have to look at the soil quality to know if it's going to be suitable soil for the drain field. Also, how much drain field you need. And that's it. Like literally, then they just tell you, hey, based on how many bedrooms you have in the house, based on the soil quality, you need, I don't know, 1,000-gallon tank and 150 feet of drain field. That's it. And then you just take that to, a professional licensed septic system installer, because you can't really do it yourself. They really need a pro to do that. And then that's it. They'll just quote you, hey, this is how much it's going to cost for me to install a tank and all your drain field. If you want more information, I did a video about the septic system like way back when, and I covered all that stuff. And I think that should answer most of your question. Will you be spray foaming the inside of fiberglass insulation? So again, spray foaming would be superior. But again, it's just because I'm a DIYer and I want to do everything myself. I'm not going to do spray foam. I'm going to do bad insulation, even though, I mean, this is stupid. I'm being stubborn here. If I was smarter, I probably would do, just because the good thing with the spray insulation is that it makes it, it blocks any kind of hair coming in. So it has a lot of advantages. But again, I just feel like I kind of want to do everything myself. So my goal for the walls is that I'm going to do bad insulation, and then I'm going to put a smart membrane on top of it. It's called what is it called? Otello. I can't remember the name. I mean, you'll figure it out when I get to it. But it's a smart membrane that apparently doesn't like, it lets moisture in or out. Like it just goes one way, and it's supposed to it's supposed to make your building kind of airtight to some extent. Like it prevents leaks from that to go from the inside to the outside. But I think it still lets the wall cavity breathe, so that, because imagine you have like moisture that's trapped inside, it would be terrible. It would get moldy. So I think that's what it does. It lets the moisture go out through the membrane, but then it doesn't let the hair, from the inside go, into your wall cavity. I don't know how it works, but it's something that's being sold on like, there's a website that sell all sorts of like anything for like passive buildings and all that. So that's what I'm going to use to make, again, I didn't do this thing super energy efficient with, added rigid insulation, but I think this is going to help, because at least I'm going to prevent a lot of like, because that's how you lose the most energy. Of course, you get thermal bridging with, your framing, but a hair leak, I mean, it's much worse than thermal bridging. So if you can prevent, leaking through your outlets to outside, I think you're really helping yourself a lot. Have you ever built a cabin in Brooklyn? No, I've never. This is my first project. So I feel like in a city it would be a lot more difficult, because you have probably a lot more rules to deal with. You probably have all sorts of crazy rules. So first step, same, you call the city, you call the county inspector, and you ask them like, hey, I want to do this. What are the steps? And they'll let you know. Usually they have a booklet. They'll be like, hey, you want to build something? Here it is. And, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. And, depending on where it is, it might be, more difficult. Again, in my area, because I'm kind of like in a rural area, it's probably as easy as it gets. But that's what I did on purpose. Yeah, you learned something new about shrinking pressure treated wood today. Well, that's great. Yeah, don't be careful. And same for staining it. Yeah, at first I was like, because all the handrails is also pressure treated. I was like, well, you know what? I should probably stain everything and then I'll install it. It'll be so much easier than like doing it afterward. That would have been a big mistake, because pressure treated wood being so wet, it literally cannot accept paint or any sort of stain. So you need to let it dry. And I looked online, like literally some builders were saying you need to let it dry for like 3 to 6 months so that it's completely dry, and then you can stain or paint. So that's what I did. I installed everything, and I just stained it, I don't know, like a few weeks ago. Are you planning on drywall or any inside wall finishing? So that's a great question. I just talked about that smart cover on the inside of the walls, and that's part of the reasoning, because this is a cabin, it's in the woods, blah blah blah. I kind of want that cabin look, so I don't want drywall. My plan is to put tongue and groove or something like that. I want wood on the walls. I really want, it's just like, I want this thing to look like out of a ski place. It's like, oh, it's really warm, it feels good, you have all the wood on the ceiling, on the walls, really nice looking, wood cabin. But the issue that I've learned is, if you actually, tongue and groove will leak air. I mean, it's, you can imagine it, when you finish sheetrock and it's done properly, it's kind of an air barrier. Even though moisture can get through it, but it's not going to leak hair actively. But tongue and groove absolutely will. And so that's something I've learned, and I'm definitely going to talk about that when I get to it, is that, I'm going to have a cathedral ceiling up there, you can see. And if I were to just put bad insulation here and then tongue and groove, then literally I've seen cases online where people have water is literally leaking through their, their ceiling. And the reason is, in the wintertime, it's cold outside, so your roof is cold, and so your sheathing here is very cold as well. And then here inside the cabin, obviously you're cranking up the heat to be comfortable, and so you have humid, warm hair in the cabin. And if you have tongue and groove, and that's all you have, the hair is going to get in there in that cavity, and once it touches your sheathing, it's going to condense, because it's warm, humid hair on a cold surface, it's going to condense water. And so you literally, and that sounds terrible. Like, I've seen videos or like pictures online on like some construction forums literally water, like in that situation, like almost you have a roof leak, but it's not coming from the roof. It's coming from condensation from the humidity on the inside. And literally people having like water dropping down in their cabin. And so again, I'm really glad that I did enough research, because that's kind of the rookie mistake that will cost you a lot of money. So there's two options to kind of, not have the problem. Either you can do, foam insulation, and then it's kind of airtight and you don't have to worry much about it. Or you can put sheetrock and then you put tongue and groove. But I'm like, oh man, I don't want to. That sounds like a lot of work. I mean, can you imagine putting sheetrock up there? It's like, there's no way. So then the other option was, okay, is there any sub of like some people, in the whole houses, they'll just put plastic, but plastic is bad because the issue is just plastic, to kind of cover your roof or your wall. Inside is that it will trap moisture. And so thankfully, that's when I came across that product. I think it's called Intello Plus, and apparently, it allows for breathing. And so far, unless I change my plans, that's my goal. That Intello Plus, and then maybe furring strip, and then tongue and groove on top of that, and hopefully that's good. Was Roxul insulation considered? I don't even know what that is. I don't know. Is that some sort of like rock wool or some other type of insulation? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what this material is or what kind of insulation this is. Really enjoy your cabinet videos. Keep them coming. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thinking about any water retention system coming off the roof. So that's a good point. As soon as I finish the siding, I'll probably install gutters, because right now, if you look, actually, with all the water falling down directly next to my foundation or my piers, it's really eroded the soil pretty badly. Not to the point that I'm exposing my foundation, but it's getting there. So as soon as I finish the siding, I'll probably either install gutters myself, or I might pay someone. And the reason is that, when you pay a pro, they put just one piece, because they actually have a machine and they roll the gutter out and they just make it on site, and they just make one piece for the size they need. If I do it myself, I have to buy 10 pieces, and then I have to like splice them, and then they can leak there. So I'm like, is it really worth my effort? I don't think so. But anyway, going back to your retention system, once I have this gutter system, they're probably going to downspout at the back of the cabin, and then they'll probably, I'll have an extension probably go, in the forest. So, I could definitely put like a 55 gallon, retention system till I get the water. So I don't know. It's not part of the plan yet, but I actually have a 55 gallon drum in my garage that I had bought a few years back that literally I'm not doing anything with. So that could easily be used for that. So we'll see. Why not? It doesn't hurt. Roxul is a great insulation material. Many benefits for proofing and soundproofing as well. Very easy to clean and work with. Okay, well, that's good to know. I'll look into it. I haven't bought the insulation for the ceiling, so that's also the problem. Is that the ceiling, I have to have all 38 insulation, and they make like literally they call it all 38C because it's called all 38 compressed. So it literally fits in 10 inches, so that it still leaves you 1 inch of gap between your insulation and the bottom of your sheathing, so that you can still have a vented roof assembly. So I guess the question would be, is that brand or product exist? Do they do that all 38 compressed, which is very specific and is only used in this situation where you're doing kind of vaulted ceiling, and that you have this kind of, insulation requirement. So I really don't know, but maybe for the walls I could use that. I'll just have to look into it. It's Saturday. You have a few hours left. What are you doing today on the cabin? Nothing. I think that's it. Like, today I'm taking it easy. When I'm, done with this live, I'm probably just gonna, because my daughter is probably about to go and probably wake up from her nap, and so that's it. We're just gonna go outside and play, and she's probably already up right now, actually, because it's 3 p.m. No, I'm not going to do anything on the cabin. I just received all my siding like last week. All my siding has been delivered. It's a big pile over there, down there by my driveway. So I have all the siding. I have all the trim for the windows, all the outside trim. So hopefully, in the next few weeks, I'm going to get started on that, and I'm going to get at it and try and get going on the siding and the trim around the windows. Again, it would be great to finish all the outside as soon as possible. All right. Well, it's been an hour and 10 minutes. I think that I'm probably going to end this soon. Congratulations and thank you. Love your videos. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the comment. What siding? Yeah, great question. So I'm going to use, don't I have a piece here? I don't think I do. I'm going to use, well, actually, let's see. No, I don't have any. I'm going to use channel rustic siding. And if you don't know what it is, just Google it. The name of it is just the cut that they make. I love it because it makes the cabin look almost like a log cabin from the outside. So it's gonna be really cool. Not the log that are rounded, but kind of more like the flat log with chinking in between. But there won't be chinking. It's just it's just a siding. But yeah, it's gonna look great. I mean, I'm really excited. I'm just getting a different color. All the stain I've done for the front, which is kind of like a dark brown. I'm gonna do more like a cedar type color on the siding. So I think it's gonna look pretty cool when it's done. So yeah. Yeah, what am I doing for internet up there? So as I mentioned in the beginning, I actually, I don't have, even the cell signal is terrible here. I'm running a 200 feet Ethernet cable right now that's connected on my Wi-Fi box in my house, and it's running through all the forest all the way here to this computer. And that's how I have internet right now in the cabin. So yeah, I try and plan everything out. And actually, it's the same cable that I'm going to use eventually that I'm going to bury, and that will offer me, an internet connection in this cabin. So it wasn't a waste of money. I'm still going to use that cable, but I figured like, hey, yeah, it would be cool to do the live inside the cabin, but I need like, a reliable internet connection. So super excited stream, and yeah, thank you, Emmanuel. Yeah, I'm excited as well. It's gonna be great. Seeing setting choice. Yeah, thank you for the live. Sure bits watching fishing videos. All right, well, I think that's it. I'm gonna end this. It's been an hour and 12. I was originally thinking this was gonna be 15 minutes. So yeah, a lot more, but I mean, obviously I'm a cabin nerd. I could talk about cabin literally all day long. So no, I do it by myself in front of my computer. So anyway, thank you everyone. I really enjoyed, all those questions were really good. So I'm really hoping that this will help people in feeling better about themselves, that they can do it if they really want to build a cabin. It's possible. It's difficult, but hopefully there's enough information out there to to do it. So yeah, I'm hoping this was helpful, that this was valuable. And if you have more questions, let me know. Comment your questions, and I can probably do a live like this, every month or every 2 months. I mean, it's kind of easy. I don't have to do any video editing. I just talk in front of my webcam. So that's I like that. That's pretty easy process. But anyway, thank you everyone, and yeah, I'll see you later on YouTube.